Hey, David.
Hey, Charles, how are you?
End of the week.
End of the week.
And pretty much end of real summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, school.
With all the kids going back to
back
school.
to school. Yeah, which is a great thing.
So sad.
No, exactly.
It's awful. It's awful when they go back to school. So we're going to do a behind the headlines.
Yes.
This is very exciting. What are we talking about? I think the hot articles that have been handed to us.
Yeah, is about Walmart and Amazon.
Clash of the Titans.
In grocery.
Walmart and Amazon in grocery. And the two articles we have here, that of course will be in links, the very hot articles. New online grocery market share analysis shows sales continue to shift away from supermarkets and towards Walmart as households search for more savings. And Article 2, probably the first one we talked, Walmart, Amazon in high-tech food fight from Forbes.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Very exciting. So yeah, we have those two giants that originally were not in grocery. Well, Walmart has been for much longer, but still.
But originally, Walmart is not a grocery chain.
Correct.
It's a mass merchant.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so you've got these two giants that are now in grocery retail, but from a very different angle, right? So Walmart, that came from the brick and mortar, I pronounced that right, and then Amazon from the online approach, with along the way, the acquisition of Whole Foods, but also have their Amazon Fresh division for direct-to-consumer delivery. So you have two directions coming. But what the article are stating is ultimately is that Walmart is winning, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's sort of not fair. When Amazon got into grocery, Walmart was already winning. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been the dominant grocer for a long time now. I think I would say what I would observe would be that Amazon's attempts at grocery have been not so successful, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Buying Whole Foods to get myself a national footprint. I don't know. I'm not an expert in retail. I just know when we look at it from the supply chain perspective, it's kind of very different from the Amazon playbook otherwise, where Amazon and they've curved back appropriately over the last post-pandemic, let's say, but they have been in a mad dash to acquire as much distribution footprint in every urban market in North America and of course elsewhere in Germany and other places. But let's just, in North America, mad dash to add square footage so that they could have this critical mass of distribution that would allow them to be, at your doorstep the next day or even sooner in some cases. Then they go off and they buy Whole Foods, and Whole Foods has a supply chain. It's never been famously a supply chain-oriented company. I mean, Whole Foods has put stores in neighborhoods where the demographics seem to match up with what they think is their target demographic, regardless of the supply chain, regardless of what the distribution network looks like. And you're sort of stuck with these with two choices. Either you have this incredibly extended national distribution footprint that requires you to travel many more miles to deliver to the store than a Walmart would, or that a Walmart would even contemplate as acceptable. Or you've got to have a very complicated portfolio of suppliers that serve different clusters or regions. Very different.
And you were doing the remark to me that if Amazon's play was to use those Whole Foods grocery store to bring customers in because they could pick up maybe one of their online order. Well, you pointed out that the customer profile of a consumer goods for Amazon versus a consumer for grocery are actually quite different.
Well, I mean, this is just my hypothesis
Yeah.
from my own life, really, that your typical habitual Whole Foods customer may use Amazon, but the classic Amazon Prime user is not a Whole Foods customer. You know, I think of Whole Foods as very suburban, you know, kind of got money to spend. It's not a luxury brand. You know, we do have luxury retailers in every major chain where the emphasis is on sort of the quality of food, and I think Whole Foods is more about that health environment. Like there's a different type of well-heeled customer that goes to Whole Foods that it doesn't strike me as somebody who's
Ordering on Amazon.
Yeah, right. Wants the toothbrush delivered to them the next day with their Prime membership. I could be totally wrong. I don't think I am so far because, you know, Amazon in the physical retail has really not made any impact on the grocery industry.
No, because Whole Food today is exactly what Whole Food was pre-acquisition.
If anything, not exciting as it used to be when it first came up. And then these articles also look at they look at three things. And so the second thing that I would bring up would be, now let's look at it online. So that's where you would expect Walmart, who, as we just said before, I mean, they just have so much you know, operating discipline. They don't open stores that are too far away from DCs. They know when to add a distribution center to serve a cluster of stores. They march, you know, in very carefully towards new markets and thoughtfully, and then they execute their supply chain quite excellently. Doesn't mean they're perfect. You know, they've got warts like any other organization would, legacy items that they probably, you know, I've heard, you know, from various peoples, they probably don't have the greatest warehouse management system on earth because it's just such a daunting task
to even contemplate to replace it. Yeah.
You know, that would take a crisis, I think, to make a move there. But point is, we're not surprised at their brick and mortar success. But then out comes some market data about how the e-commerce grocery world is shaping up. And I'll ask you, just to test you, if you read the article recently, what percentage of online grocery sales does Walmart own?
37.5%.
37.5%.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's huge.
I actually think, I don't actually think, I'm almost 99% confident they have a larger portion of online grocery than they have bricks and mortar grocery.
Yeah. Okay, that could be.
Well, look, Walmart is not 37% of the U.S.
No, you're
grocery
right. You're right.
market.
Exactly.
Like, let's say it's 20 to 25%.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's almost twice the amount of online groceries are happening via Walmart than our, you know, sales
in the stores,
which tells you just sort of how not great our traditional supermarket chains have been doing in the online market.
Yeah.
It also says something really interesting about Amazon, because Amazon should have
the
wiped
upper hand.
them right.
Yep.
Should be completely, you know, dominating, and again, Amazon has probably really failed.
Well, what it says is that it's actually much harder to do grocery than to do online.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Years ago, and this was pre-COVID. This was so many years ago, no one will remember. I remember going to an Amazon grocery facility just for a visit. You know, just a fun visit. And if you think about, so the Amazon, they built their own WMS, inside warehouse management system technology to run their warehouses. They did it with the concept of how do you distribute 1 million titles of books.
Books, yeah.
And in the book business, sure, you have some hits. You have your bestsellers. Then you also have books that are always being sold.
Yeah.
So, you know, The Shining from Stephen King, Orwell's 1984, any Jane Austen novel. and the Bible. Like there's some, there are. However, you have 999,000 titles.
You'd only need to hold a few units.
Lucky if you get one sale a year.
Yeah.
Effectively, where you put them in your warehouse does not matter.
Yeah.
It won't change the hit density, the travel. It doesn't change anything about the operation. And so Amazon had this random put away logic put into their WMS. So then they go off and they open this online grocery fulfillment center. I went to visit, and you would see the impact of the random put away in grocery. So I'll get to the consumer behavior point in a second. But so carrots, a bag of carrots, were sitting under a mister. You know, something for coriander, parsley, whatever.
Yeah.
Keep your leafy greens nice and fresh. Bag of carrots. In the freezer, you'd have vanilla ice cream, over 6 feet on a shelf over 6 feet that you're reaching for. Okay, but your whatever
watermelon.
Right.
Treat.
Watermelon ice cream is right there in the golden zone, and that's just a function of what happens when you do random put away. And I won't get into the boring math behind that, but it's kind of a classic situation we always see, and you can't take what is a very habit formed consumer pattern like groceries and apply a more random demand WMS that serves random demand to that. It was a bad application. And of course, ultimately, that's going to end up with you're not getting the best quality of produce. You're not getting the best quality of anything because nothing's really been treated with the love and care that it should.
Yeah, and a consumer that has so many options to order from will not tolerate this for a very long time.
Another fascinating thing that we should talk about, we've seen this statistic before in online grocery. Half of Walmart's orders are pickups.
Yep.
Pickups. And I think we saw that with Loblaws. We looked at Loblaws and they had the same statistic. And this is mind-blowing to me. I think we've talked about this before. I don't
understand
why you would go and pick it up.
Yeah.
If you're going to go, why don't you just walk in and take the extra 10 minutes to buy the groceries? And I heard a really good counter to that. Let's say school season's back, right? We're going to go into fall sports, and I know your kids are largely couch potatoes, but I have super athlete kids, and let's say but in all seriousness, let's say it's Thursday, and we go to a soccer game.
Yep.
Let's call it a soccer game. That's a universe. Go to the soccer game, and it's 5:00 at night, and you really want to get your groceries done. And while you're watching, because your kid is definitely on the bench most of the game, right?
So I don't even have to watch.
And my kid's on the bench is never on the bench, so I get bored. Like another goal, great, So we
you got time.
You got time. You place your
But you're
order for
stuck there.
pickup and to the grocery store that's between you and your home, and then you boom pick it up and you get home. I thought about that and I realized, okay, it makes sense.
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, 50% of Walmart's volume is pickup.
Yeah, exactly. But and
which is an impossible thing to do without having places to go pick it up in.
Yeah.
Which Walmart can do and Whole Foods can't.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I wonder is the role of having bricks and mortar locations. It's just very, very powerful in enabling your dominance.
Yeah. Yeah, and getting there, like developing that omni-channel strategy was not simple.
Another thing that I think is really interesting about the Walmart online supply chain, they are very committed, and they say their sales have increased the more first-party fulfillment they do, meaning running their own
Fleet.
Centralized facilities and running their own delivery. And I wonder if the reason the supermarkets haven't been as strong, I don't know this, I'm just wondering, is there a penalty or discount in terms, or a depression in your natural demand that comes from being more Instacart oriented? Because that is kind of what many maybe too many retailers, classic supermarket chains have done is they've
outsource.
they've just given their online business up to Instacart, and that from a capital investment perspective, probably the right call. All right, it's a very legitimate option.
And was also probably a legitimate option in a time where, especially with COVID, where the spike in demand for online, this is the fastest way I'll be able to offer my customers some online options.
Yeah, and I think obviously behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain, you'd say Instacart is a non-union option, and you could see people worried about adding staff that will become unionized, and then the costs associated with that, even though that's obviously not meant with any disrespect to the work and the important roles that unions play in protecting the interests of their members. But it is a consideration when people are making what could be significant investments on what can be marginally profitable sales channels, right? I don't think anyone's going into online fulfillment to make more money. I think they're doing it to protect their market and to keep their customers happy. And that's another idea that they talk about is this adaptive retail, which is sort of, we are going to be everywhere where you want us to be, customer, and I think that it's almost a defensive position more than anything.
Yeah, and but in relation with another podcast we did a while ago, the Albertson and Kroger still not resolved potential merger.
Well, it won't be resolved for
exactly. You kind of wonder, well, because surely they will use this as an argument of saying, look, we cannot let these two, or let Walmart alone, just take on and take on more and more of, well, in this case, the online, but grocery as a whole. So we need to not step up, but create another size of organizations that can compete with this.
I'm sure that's their argument. I think if they bring up Amazon, I think that's a really weak argument. It doesn't look like Amazon's doing much of anything. Yeah. The other thing I think is really interesting is within the retail footprint, the actual physical stores, the amount of investment that they're making in technology and smart carts and all that stuff. We'll see if that really helps or hinders, if it creates more friction for a customer. And then online, of course, they're both touting a whole bunch of AI things. I do think that shopping assistants will be one day useful, which is both of them have rolled out shopping assistants who basically show up and give you suggestions of what you go. Oh, I see you're buying marshmallows. Would you like graham crackers? And it's, to me, I'm reminded of the disastrous Mr. Paperclip of the old Microsoft, which was it, Office, I don't know, 95? Yeah. And the paperclip shows up and says, looks like you're writing a letter. Yeah. Let me help you. Oh, my God. And I don't need your help.
Yeah.
But in that line, there was one thing that I thought was pretty cool, and I think people will genuinely like this. Ultimately, when we get to a point when these shopping assistants can handle complex tasks, like in a couple of weeks, I'll go away for the weekend, and I'll say, hey, I'm going away for the weekend. Shop what I need for
two dinners,
2 breakfasts, 2 dinners, 2 lunches, and I want zero waste at the end of it. And you imagine you throw that to it, and then it creates just the right amount.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be
If it could do that, it could be very helpful.
Along with preferences and what you should include and
Years
not.
ago, when we were working with Chef, that was the founder of Chef's idea was, I'd love to have a Chef button where any recipe pops up on the internet and I can create the shopping list for you and deliver it to you. Ideally portioned. That was the, and when you think about that would be great. As we learned through that company, it's very expensive to do that.
But then you'll be forced of watching every goal that your kids make.
I'll be watching forever then. Anyway, so that's it.
All right.
Walmart versus Amazon. The early rounds are heavily both online and offline
To Walmart.
to
side.
Walmart.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
Thank you.